They went into the hills of California to document wildfire damage. What they found was something ancient, something hungry. This is the recovered footage of their final moments. The last transmission. A terrifying cryptid horror experience. Subscribe if you dare. Location: Northern California. Wildfire Zone, Day 1, 10:43 a.m. Another section filmed, Terry, Jay said, slinging his pack over one shoulder. The wildfire already torched this quadrant. We've got 4 more to hit if we want to finish before the light's gone. Terry checked the drone feed and nodded, her tone clipped but neutral. I've got the overlays from the State Environmental Commission. The next burn zone is 2 miles northeast. Should be a straight shot through this ridge line. Doyle adjusted the AR vest on his chest and scanned the scorched horizon. Charred trees jutted from the ground like blackened ribs. Smoke still curled up from buried embers. Hard to believe all this started with a cigarette, Doyle muttered, kicking a melted garden gnome from the ashes. I guess we can definitely rule out space lasers. Ha! Terry, laughing out loud, with a big smile, shaking her head. She leaned in over Jay's shoulder, finger trailing along the touchscreen map. This path cuts right through what's left of Westview Estates. Should be the fastest route to the next quadrant. As they moved out, the crew fell into a quiet march, boots crunching over soot and bone-white disbury. The air still tasted like metal and smoke. They passed a row of twisted mailboxes, warped by heat. On the left, a family dug through the rubble of what had once been a Spanish-style villa. A father lifted a charred toolbox from the ashes, while his daughter, no older than 10, cradled a scorched photo album wrapped in plastic. Megan slowed down to watch. "Jesus," she whispered, but no one responded. Terry glanced back at Jay. He didn't stop walking. The camera in his hand stayed level, rolling. "Make sure we capture the real stuff," he said. "Emotion sells." Doyle at the rear turned off his comms and muttered, "Yeah, so does blood." Up ahead, a tree cracked and fell across the path with a dull, wet thud, not from fire, but from rot. The forest wasn't done dying. 11:38 a.m. 55 minutes later, the crew reached the next quadrant. The land was scarred beyond recognition, a once majestic forest reduced to a smoldering graveyard of ash and splintered trees. Thick white smoke curled from the ground like breath from a dying beast. The air shimmered with heat and haze, distorting the blackened landscape into something ghost-like. Jay whistled low, standing beside a massive redwood carcass. The bark had been baked off in layers, revealing cracked flesh underneath, brittle and peeling. "Jesus," he muttered. "This place used to be a wedding spot, didn't it?" Terry didn't answer. Her boots crunched through soot as she stepped over a collapsed fence post, tablet in hand. Doyle adjusted the focus on his handheld rig, panning across the devastation with slow, steady hands. The lens captured it all. Not just destruction, but silence. No birds, no squirrels, no wind, just smoke, and the faint hiss of heat escaping the earth. The once lush forest, he narrated under his breath, a green cathedral, now cold and hollow. Then, movement. A figure appeared in the haze, 1/4 mile out, walking fast and waving one hand overhead. "Megan?" Terry blinked, lifting her hand to shield her eyes from the glare. It was her, smiling, bubbly, relieved. Her yellow flannel shirt stood out like a flare against the grayscale ruin. "Oh my God, am I glad to see you guys," she called out, her voice cracking from dry air. I got turned around back there. The crew gathered around her with a mix of surprise and concern. Jay clapped her on the back. Well, look who wandered out of Narnia. I thought you were behind us at the ridge line, Terry said, eyes narrowing slightly. Megan laughed nervously, brushing ash off her jeans. I was. I stopped to grab dirt samples for the EPA. That topsoil they flagged, you remember? But then I got dizzy, nauseous. Her face turned serious. I don't know. Something felt off. Like someone was watching me. Just for a second. It freaked me out. I panicked, kept walking, and ended up completely lost. Terry nodded slowly, skeptical but quiet. You can ride back to the city with us when we wrap this, no problem. Thanks. I didn't want to call in and make it a thing, Megan added. I just figured I'd find you guys eventually. Jay lifted the camera and grinned. Well, lucky for you, we're the only living souls in a 10-mile radius. But as Megan turned to follow them, Terry glanced back over her shoulder toward the thick smoke behind them, where Megan had emerged. Terry slowed her pace, squinting through the gauzy layers of smoke rising off the scorched earth. She thought she saw it, a flicker just beyond the trees, a shape, a shift, too fast to name, too strange to explain. Then came the breeze. The smoke around them, still and ghostly moments before, suddenly whipped into motion. It didn't roll like normal wind. It spun, unnaturally, in a tight swirling circle around a patch of barren ground, like something exhaling slowly beneath the ash. Terry stopped walking. Jay bumped into her. What's the holdup? She watched the smoke dance a moment longer, then shook her head. Nothing. Thought I saw. Never mind. They continued. The terrain ahead sloped upward, and at its crest stood a thick charred tree stump, dark as coal, unnaturally round, and maybe 4 feet wide. It stood alone in a clearing, surrounded by skeletal bushes and the remains of a melted fence. Doyle kept filming, the handheld's lens jittering slightly as he walked. He zoomed in on the stump, absent-mindedly, framing it against the white sky, and then it moved, a subtle rock, left, then right, not from wind. There was no wind. Doyle stopped walking. Guys, he said, blinking hard, adjusting the lens. No one answered. Guys, the sharpness in his voice finally cut through the crunch of boots on ash. Jay turned, annoyed. What? Doyle pointed toward the stump. That thing just moved. Jay squinted up the ridge. It's a tree stump. Number, I saw it shift, like it was breathing. Terry looked too, heart beginning to hammer, but not from the hike. She raised her binoculars. There's no wind, she whispered. The stump twitched again. This time they all saw it, and then it began to sway. Side to side, slowly, like something trying to shake off sleep. Megan stepped back instinctively. The haze parted for a heartbeat. The stump rose. A towering figure unfolded from the ground, like a collapsing structure in reverse, joints popping, limbs stretching. Its arms were too long, ending in curled claws. The back was matted with soot and patches of blackened fur. A ridge of bone jutted along its spine. Then it turned, its head craned with a disturbing fluidity. Amber eyes locked onto them, cold, unblinking, a predator's gaze, and without sound or warning, it bolted into the trees, fast, terrifyingly fast. Trees cracked and snapped in its wake, and then silence. They stood frozen, mouths open, eyes wide, trying to process what they'd just seen. What the heck was that? Doyle rasped, voice barely above a whisper. No one answered, because none of them had a name for it, but it had one for them. Prey. Terry snapped out of her daze, breath hitching in her throat. Let's go back, she said sharply. No one argued. Doyle gave a tight nod. Jay and Megan were already turning around, their eyes still fixed on the empty space where the stump had once stood. It looked at us like it was going to kill us, Megan whispered. Her voice cracked on the last word. The four of them began the slow march back, boots crunching over ash and brittle roots. The smoke seemed thicker now, curling around their legs like it was trying to hold them in place. Jay glanced at his watch. If we stay on track, we can be back to the van in 2 hours. Tops. That's a long 2 hours with that thing out here, Doyle muttered. He kept glancing over his shoulder, camera still hanging from his grip, like dead weight. It moved faster than anything I've ever seen, he added, like a blur with bones. Jay rubbed the back of his neck, his voice low. It had to be 9 feet tall, easy, bigger than any bear, and upright. Terry said nothing. Her focus was forward, scanning the dead forest like it was a war zone. Then Megan stumbled. She hit the ground hard, coughing as soot puffed up around her. Megan? Terry dropped to her knees beside her. Megan's face had gone pale. She clutched her temples like the air itself was pressing in on her skull. It's the same, she gasped. Like before, dizzy, but worse now, like the ground just shifted under me. Terry touched her shoulder gently. Take a second. Breathe. Doyle froze mid-step. His head tilted up slightly. His nostrils flared. You guys smell that? He asked. Jay turned. What are you? Meat, Doyle said. Rot, like something died and got left in the sun. He looked back toward the clearing they had left minutes earlier. His voice dropped. Oh no. There, behind the charred husk of a tree, tall, wide, unmoving, a shadow stood. Not black, hairy. Its outline was ragged, uneven. It didn't sway. It didn't blink. It just stood there, watching, deciding. Terry's fingers trembled as she gripped Megan's shoulder, sweat and ash streaking her face. I know you're not okay, she said, breath ragged, but we have to move. Jay, get over here. Jay rushed in, grabbed Megan's other arm, and together they hoisted her up. Megan dangled between them, her legs dragging behind her like she had no bones left. Get me out of here, she mumbled, her eyes unfocused, face pale. Please. They stumbled forward. Behind them, Doyle was still walking backward, the handheld camera now forgotten and swinging from his strap. His eyes were locked on the towering, unmoving shape, half hidden behind the scorched tree. It stood perfectly still. Too still. It's watching us, he whispered. Jesus Christ, it's still watching us. Then it stepped forward. Its full height dwarfed the tree it had been using for cover. 9 feet, maybe more, covered in patchy soot-caked fur, muscles rippling beneath its hide. Its massive chest rose and fell with slow, deliberate breaths. Its arms were too long, its shoulders too broad, its eyes burned like coals, and then it opened its mouth. The roar was a living thing. It didn't just echo, it hit them, a deep, guttural shockwave that cracked the silence, shaking ash loose from dead branches above. The air trembled, the ground shuddered, it vibrated in their bones. Megan screamed and collapsed, clutching her ears. Blood trickled from one nostril. Incoming, Doyle shouted, and then it charged. Not stomping, not clumsy. It exploded forward like a boulder launched from a cannon, arms pumping, legs chewing up earth, a blur of black rage and hunger. Doyle tried to dive aside. Too late. The creature slammed into him shoulder first with a sickening crunch that threw him 10 feet sideways into a tree. His body crumpled like paper. Terry and Jay hit the dirt just in time, rolling over broken roots and hot ash, hearts pounding like war drums. But it wasn't after them. It was after her. Megan lay where she fell, gasping, disoriented, then screaming as the creature reached her in a single lunge. It grabbed her like a doll. One massive clawed hand closed around her torso, the other tangled in her legs, and then it ran, vanishing into the smoking tree line in seconds. Her screams followed them, raw, terrified, piercing. "Megan!" Jay screamed, running a few steps before stopping cold. Then came a sound that made the world tilt sideways. A wet, echoing snap. Bone. Loud. Final. The forest fell silent. Even the wind seemed to recoil. Terry dropped to her knees. Jay backed away, staring into the smoke where Megan had vanished. Terry ran over to Doyle and dropped to her knees beside him, her hands already slick with ash and blood. His face was gray. His breath came in wet, rattling gasps. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth, and his left arm was twisted unnaturally across his chest. Worse, his side was caving in with every breath. Ribs. 2, at least. Maybe more. "He's got a puncture," she muttered. "We need to get the arm stable or it's going to tear through more." Jay crouched beside her, eyes wide, lips cracked from dry air. "If we don't set it now, he'll bleed out or pass out before we get halfway back." Doyle blinked slowly. "Where did it go?" he rasped. "Where's Megan? Did you see? Did you hear what it did?" Jay grabbed him by the collar, firm but not cruel. "Doyle, focus. You hear me?" Doyle's eyes fluttered. Jay let go and stood, scanning the burnt brush. He broke 2 charred branches from a fallen limb and brought them over. Terry was already rummaging through her pack, pulling out a wool sweater and an elastic strap. "Terry, hold him," Jay said. "Doyle, bite." He slid a thick branch between Doyle's teeth. The man clamped down with a grunt. Terry braced his shoulders. "On 3, Jay said, but there was no 3. He gripped the broken arm, slick with blood, already swelling, and yanked. The snap was wet and loud. Doyle's entire body arched off the ground, a muffled scream tearing through the stick clenched in his mouth. Spit and blood leaked from the edges. His eyes rolled back, and for a moment they thought he'd passed out. Terry moved fast, wrapping the sweater tight and lashing it to the sticks with the strap. Her hands were shaking, not from the injury, from the silence around them. Jay looked up. Nothing moved, but the forest felt wrong, as if the trees were holding their breath. Doyle moaned, his voice distant. "Get me up. I'm not gonna be next." Terry and Jay exchanged a glance, then nodded. Jay grabbed under his good arm. Terry took the other side, and together, dragging a half-conscious man, they started walking. And behind them, somewhere in the smoke, something followed. They moved as quickly as they could manage, half dragging, half carrying Doyle through the charred underbrush. Each step was agony. Doyle's breathing had turned ragged, his chest hitching with every inhale. The broken arm hung at his side like a weight made of fire. Sweat poured down his face, mixing with ash and blood. His boots dragged more than they lifted. "Hold up," Terry ordered, planting her heels and crouching beside him. Jay eased Doyle down. Terry unwrapped the sweat-soaked makeshift splint and retightened it, using what little clean fabric she had left to pack under the bone. Doyle winced and groaned, barely conscious. She shined a penlight into his eyes. His pupils were uneven. "He's going into shock," she said. "Heartbeats jacked, skin's going cold." "I'm fine," Doyle muttered, blinking slow. "Just cold is all." Then the air shifted. Still. Too still. A low growl rolled across the landscape, soft as thunder in the bones. It seemed to rise from the earth itself. Doyle's eyes snapped open. Oh, no. He pushed himself up with a sudden burst of adrenaline, wobbling on his feet. That house, that family, the one we passed earlier. We're close, right? Right? It's not much, but maybe. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I know where it is, Jay said. 10 more minutes, just past that hill. Terry nodded, already adjusting Doyle's arm over her shoulder. Jay took point, moving fast but low, his camera now slung and forgotten. Doyle gritted his teeth, forcing one foot in front of the other. The growl came again, closer this time. Not angry, not roaring. They pushed forward through the smoke and ruin, every step dragging like lead. Doyle's arm hung limp again, his face drained of color, lips cracked and bleeding. His breaths came shallow and fast. Terry supported most of his weight, teeth clenched. Jay stayed ahead, scanning the blackened trail like it might open beneath them. Then, on the other side of the hill, Jay stopped. We're here. Below, in the ashen clearing, sat the remains of the Spanish-style home they'd passed hours earlier. Once a sun-washed estate, it was now a fractured shell of adobe and scorched wood. Only one wall still stood, a cracked archway and chimney rising like a tombstone above the rubble. The truck was gone. The father and daughter who had been sifting through the wreckage earlier vanished. They had taken what they could and fled. It's empty, Terry whispered. They're gone. Still it was shelter. It was something. They made their way down the slope, boots slipping on loose ash and scorched gravel. Just as they reached the edge of the clearing, Terry felt the hairs on her arms rise. Something was wrong. She turned. At the top of the ridge behind them, the creature stood, perfectly still, watching. It was massive, dark, its fur caked in soot and dried blood, its silhouette distorted by heat, shimmer, and smoke. It stood in the open, not hidden, not stalking, just observing, letting them see it. Its amber eyes flickered in the haze like coals. It's letting us go, Jay muttered. No, Terry said coldly. It's hurting us. They reached the shell of the house just as Doyle collapsed again. Terry and Jay dragged him under the broken archway. The house offered no real protection, just 2 partial walls, scorched furniture, and a melted sink, but it was enough to catch their breath. To pretend, for a moment, they had found sanctuary. Terry peeked over the rubble. The ridge was empty. The creature was gone. Jay moved through the burnt-out shell of the house like a man cornered. His eyes darted from the broken windows to the smoldering tree line, then to the sky. Anything but Doyle's labored breathing or Terry's silent judgment. This isn't real. This is a nightmare. It doesn't end here. Not with me. He picked up a blackened piece of drywall and hurled it across the ruins. It clattered off the last standing wall. Doyle let out a wet cough, blood spattering down his chin. Just go, Doyle rasped. You can still make it. Terry leaned down beside him, brushing ash from his cheek. Jay couldn't even look at them. His mind raced. You didn't come out here to die. You came for the footage. You came to document the destruction. Make something gritty, raw. You came for the money the state was paying. Easy grant cash for a fire recovery series. You came to show just enough suffering to look noble. Just enough nature porn to sell to Netflix. And now the woods were quiet, but not empty. Now Megan was gone, ripped from the earth like a weed. Doyle was broken and bleeding. Terry was staring at him like she saw through every layer of the brand he'd built. You didn't come here for them. You came to jumpstart your film career, to turn this hellhole into a breakthrough doc. Sweaty close-ups, drone shots over burnt ridges, time lapses of rebirth. You saw Emmy reels in the smoke. Now all Jay saw was a burning blur of fur and muscle, and his own death if he stayed. No one was coming. There were no rangers, no helicopters, no rescue. But the van. That van meant safety, escape, relevance. If he could just get back to it, he could drive out, call it in, sell the footage. Hell, he'd frame Megan as the tragic hook, an opening cold case mystery, something viral. You can do this. Run, get the van, come back, or don't. His fingers tightened around the strap of his camera bag. Let them figure out the ending. Just survive long enough to tell the story. Even if it wasn't the truth, Jay turned. Listen, I can get us out of here. Terry looked up, skeptical. What are you talking about? The van. It's a mile and a half, maybe less. I can run it. 10 minutes, tops. I bring it back here. We get Doyle inside, and we're gone before that thing circles back. Terry stared at him, not speaking. Doyle shook his head. It's out there. Jay's voice sharpened, defensive, and staying here isn't a death sentence. He forced a chuckle, dry and cracked. Come on, I used to run cross-country. I've still got legs. I'll make it. Terry stepped toward him. You're not doing this for us, Jay. You're doing this for you. He didn't deny it. So what if I am? I don't want to die in a burned-out house next to a dying man and some bleeding heart. Silence. Look, he added, shifting his tone. If I make it, we all live. If I don't... He paused, eyes wide and hollow. Then, you'll know to run. He turned without another word, tightening the straps on his backpack. He didn't look at Doyle, didn't look at Terry. He just ran. Straight into the smoke, into the forest, into the creature's hunting ground. What he didn't see, what none of them saw, was the faint, fresh impression of a massive footstep in the ash just beyond the hill, the same direction he was headed. Terry shook her head, lips pressed tight, eyes tracking the sun overhead. It was still daylight. That meant Jay had time. But her gut told her the truth. He's not coming back. He didn't leave to save them. He left to save himself. He ran not out of courage but fear, the kind that turned people into liars and cowards. And if the creature didn't kill him, Jay would never look back. She looked down at Doyle, pale and barely holding on, his broken arm cradled against his ribs. He was slowing her down, but he wasn't the reason she stayed. Then her fingers found it. The drone controller. 50% battery. Enough. She activated the drone, set it on a slab of scorched tile, and let it lift into the sky. Its rotors whirred like distant wasps. The feed flickered, then cleared. The ruined forest stretched endlessly, charred and skeletal, glowing faintly in the midday haze. There, Doyle said, pointing at the screen. That's him. He's moving fast. Terry zoomed in. Jay's figure cut across the ash like a white blur, bounding over roots, arms and legs pumping like a man with something chasing him. Because there was. He might just make it, Doyle breathed. Zoom out. The van should be in the lower left. She pulled the camera back. The white van came into frame, partially hidden near the base of a dry creek bed. Terry allowed herself the faintest smile. He's halfway there. Then Doyle gasped. Look, there, left side. That thing. Terry blinked. A dark shape, graceful, impossibly fast, moved through the wreckage 200 yards from Jay, weaving between scorched trees like smoke on legs. The creature. Oh my God, Terry whispered. He hasn't seen it. She tilted the drone down, dropping lower. The hum of its propellers caught Jay's attention. He looked up, then squinted as the drone shifted to his left. That's when he saw it. The monster. It was running now, hard and clean, its massive limbs moving in long, ground-chewing strides. Jay picked up speed, panic etched into every movement. "It's closing in," Doyle shouted, dragging himself upright, trying to will Jay forward. The drone tracked both. Jay, 300 yards from the van. The beast, 500, but gaining. Jay sprinted, body lurching like it was about to fall apart. Then, miraculously, he reached the van. He threw the door open, dove inside, slammed it shut, turned the key. The van rumbled to life. He shoved it into gear, and then the creature hit. A black blur of muscle and rage crashed into the side of the van, lifting it partially off the ground. It tilted, then flipped onto its side with a metallic wail, rolling across the dirt in a cloud of dust and smoke. Terry and Doyle stared, frozen, as the drone hovered above. The monster stalked forward and ripped the driver's door clean off like it was foil. Jay screamed. It reached in and dragged him out by the arm, lifting his body into the air. The creature paused, almost thoughtful. Then it bit down. Jay's arm tore free in a spray of red. The monster tossed it aside like garbage. Jay howled, then choked, then barely made a sound at all before the creature grabbed him again and with terrifying ease twisted his head clean from his shoulders. Blood sprayed in a wide arc as his body dropped. The creature crouched and began to eat. On the screen, Terry watched Jay's twitching body vanish beneath the thing's massive frame. She dropped the controller. Doyle collapsed beside her, gasping, shaking. "He was fast," he whispered. "Not fast enough," Terry said, staring blankly into the smoke. Terry slumped beside the crumbled wall, the drone controller still clutched in her hands, useless now. Doyle sat against the scorched hearth, his splinted arm trembling, face pale with shock. Neither spoke for a long while. Jay's final screams still echoed in their minds, not just pain, but betrayal. He'd promised to come back. He never had the chance. Terry crouched beside a half-collapsed fire break and pulled out her phone. Full bars of battery. 0 bars of service. She stared at the screen. No signal. She tried 911. She heard the whistle. Then the automated voice saying the call could not go through. Every tower in the area had either melted or collapsed during the wildfire weeks ago. Of course. She shoved the phone back in her pocket and stood. "We can't call for help. That was never an option. We have to run." Doyle was slumped nearby, clutching his side, breath ragged but steady. Blood stained the bandage around his ribs, and his splinted arm hung limp in the fading light. But his eyes were sharp now. "I got a good look at it," he said. Terry turned toward him. It was a Bigfoot. I mean, it matches everything. Height, build, the way it moves. But this one, he shook his head. This isn't some benevolent spirit of the forest. It's not the gentle wild man in the legends. He looked her dead in the eye. This one's eating people. Terry didn't flinch, because its food supply is gone. Doyle nodded slowly. The deer are gone. Elk, rabbits, berries, all burned up or dead. This whole area is a graveyard, but it's not dead. It adapted. And now it knows, Terry said quietly. It's not just surviving. Doyle's voice dropped into a rasp. It knows it's the apex predator now, that nothing out here can stop it. Terry stood, brushing ash from her hands and clothes, the air still thick with smoke and distant heat. The sunlight was thinning now, stretched amber across the ruined trees. "It's still daylight," she said, her voice sharp and steady. "We're getting out of here, now." Doyle groaned, pushing himself up with a grimace, cradling his broken arm. "Then let's do it." Terry dumped the contents of her backpack onto a cracked slab of scorched tile. Out spilled a half-used can of hairspray, her laptop, deadweight now, lipstick, a change of socks, a shirt and underwear, a small jar of Vaseline. She scanned the ruined house and spotted a blackened wooden chair. Without hesitation, she lifted it over her head and smashed it against the stone wall. The legs cracked off clean. She picked up 2 of them, took the t-shirt from her pack, and ripped it into strips with trembling but determined hands. She wrapped the strips around the end of each stick, tight like makeshift wicks. Then she dipped the cloth into the Vaseline, coating it thick. Doyle watched, his mouth twitching into a smile despite the pain. Torches, cool. Terry gave him a sideways glance. Fire might scare it off. It's already learned to hate it. Fire destroyed everything it needs to survive. She snapped open the lighter from her back pocket. We light these, and we move. Fast. The road's still 2, maybe 3 miles east. She picked up the hairspray and shook it. If it shows up, I've got a blowtorch. Doyle nodded, lifting one of the torches in his not the worst plan I've ever heard. The wind shifted. Somewhere deep in the forest, something groaned. Not a tree, not the earth. Something alive. Terry met Doyle's eyes. Stay close, she said. We'll face it if we have to, but I'd rather not. They stepped away from the ruined house, flames flickering at the end of their makeshift weapons, leaving a trail of disturbed ash behind them. The sun sank lower. They moved at a pace just shy of panic. Slow, deliberate, and quiet enough that Doyle's labored breaths wouldn't give them away. Every step crunched softly on blackened earth, the soles of their boots sinking into ash. The forest is still making sounds, Terry whispered. So, Doyle replied, barely audible. She paused, turned her head slightly. If it goes silent, that means it's near. Doyle nodded slowly, then added, the smell, too. You'll know. He glanced sideways, whispering like a kid telling ghost stories. I saw a segment once, on some conspiracy channel. Claimed the government was flying out burnt bodies of these things, treating them, relocating them to remote mountain ranges. Terry raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. They know, Doyle added. They've always known, and I thought Todd Standing was full of it. Terry smirked. Yeah, well, you can apologize to him when we get out of here. The trail ended in wreckage. The white van, once their symbol of escape, lay upside down, wheels turned awkwardly like snapped limbs. Glass glittered in the ash like spilled ice. The driver's door had been torn completely off, not opened, but peeled, as if the thing had hands strong enough to open metal like fruit skin. Terry froze. Doyle caught up, breathing hard, gripping his splinted arm. Then they saw Jay, his arm, the one he used to gesture on camera, to point dramatically toward the horizon, was now flung at the base of a charred stump, gnawed and shredded to tendons. The fingers were curled in a claw of rigor mortis, like he'd died still trying to fight. A few feet from the van, something even worse. Jay's head, still half attached to the spinal column, had been ripped clean from the torso, like the creature had twisted it free just to watch it separate. His face was frozen in a silent scream. The exposed vertebrae were cracked, the nerves frayed like old wires. God, Doyle turned away, bile rising. Terry swallowed it down, forced herself to move. She climbed into the van, quiet, efficient, shaking. You don't get to panic, not yet. She found 3 road flares in the glove box. Under the seat, a tire iron, slick with something, maybe blood, maybe oil. She wiped it off on the seat and slid out. This might buy us time. She handed a flare to Doyle, who clutched it like a lifeline. Main road's less than a mile, she whispered. We move, we burn anything that tries to stop us. And then the smell hit. Rot. Copper. Old fur, wet soil, and something wrong. Terry tensed. Doyle's breath caught. It's here. The forest went still. No birds, no insects, no wind. Just the whisper of ash shifting, and the soft sound of bones being moved. Terry turned. There, behind a half-burned fallen log, lay a massive mound of fur and muscle. Coiled, breathing, sleeping, the Bigfoot. It had made a bed in the ruin, nestled into ash, tucked beneath tree roots like a war beast in hibernation, 9 feet tall at least, broad shoulders heaving with every breath. Its back was slick with soot and dried blood. Flies buzzed quietly around its matted hair and split flesh. And then one eye opened, red, wet, reflecting firelight. The pupil adjusted. It locked on them. It didn't roar. It didn't leap. It simply unfolded, slow and towering, rising like death itself, stretching its limbs with a lazy horror, as if waking from a long, satisfied nap. Bits of bone fell from its fur. Something snapped under its foot. Then it smiled. But it wasn't a greeting, not even close. It was the kind of smile a butcher gives a struggling pig, a slow, deliberate, eeny-meeny-miny kind of grin. Then it raised one massive clawed hand and pointed at Terry, and then it licked its lips. The tongue, blackened at the edges, dragged slowly across its yellowed fangs like a grotesque ritual. A guttural grunt escaped its throat as it turned its head toward Doyle. Then it gestured with a flick of its chin. Go, like it was offering him mercy, like he'd been dismissed. Doyle hissed through his teeth, eyes wide. Oh my God, it wants to eat you. Terry stood frozen, her heart pounding in her ears. Then she felt it. Anger, pure and hot. Like hell, she spat. Doyle's breathing was ragged, but he took a step forward and planted himself between her and the beast. Get behind me, he said, never taking his eyes off the monster. The creature's eyes narrowed. It bared its teeth, lips curling in disgust. Then it roared, the sound ripping through the forest like thunder. The ground shook. It was offended. They had refused its courtesy. It stepped forward, slow and deliberate, and for every step they took back, it matched, closing the distance, step by snarling step. Another roar, another demand. Doyle, Terry said, voice trembling, we go together. He didn't look back. Terry, it wants you, not me. I'm not fast. I'm not making it, but I can give you time. She shook her head, starting to protest, but Doyle cut her off. The flash drive, in my vest pocket. He gave a small nod, never turning from the beast. Everything we filmed, get it out. Terry's throat clenched. Her hands trembled. Don't do this. Light the flares, then haul ass. The Bigfoot let out a low, rattling growl. It was only 10 yards away now, hunched forward like a sprinter waiting on the shot. Doyle reached into his vest with his good hand and yanked out the 2 flares. Click, snap. Red fire burst from both ends, lighting the forest in a glow like hellfire. The creature flinched, just for a second. Now Terry, Doyle muttered. Go. Terry reached into his vest pocket, grabbed the drive and ran, fighting every urge to turn around. As she hit the trail, behind her, the woods exploded in sound. A roar. Doyle stood his ground, arms outstretched, fire burning in each hand, the twin-rode flares casting a red flickering glow across his sweat-slicked face. Just 1 foot separated him from the towering, snarling nightmare. 9 feet of muscle, hair, and rage. He saw everything now, sunken brown eyes, spaced 10 inches apart, a nose flat and flaring, steam billowing from its nostrils like a furnace. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of mismatched yellowed teeth. 4-inch fangs jutting forward like spikes forged to tear. The beast grunted, flinching slightly. It raised a clawed hand, shielding its face from the searing light of the flares. Behind Doyle, the crunch of footsteps retreating. Terry was running. Good. Go. He screamed after her, even as his lungs rattled and blood filled his throat. Get out of here. The creature turned its head. It saw her, its meal, escaping, and this man, this bag of broken bones, was in its way. It made its decision. With a guttural snarl, the Bigfoot lunged forward and swiped. Doyle ducked just in time, barely, and brought the tire iron up from his side in a savage upward jab, plunging it deep into the beast's left thigh. The creature howled, a sound that split the trees and scattered ash into the air like a bomb had gone off. Its eyes flared wide, lips peeling back in animal fury. Then it struck. One massive hand wrapped around Doyle's throat, lifting him off the ground with ease. Its other hand yanked out the tire iron, the metal slick and glistening red. With terrifying speed and precision, it drove the tire iron into Doyle's chest, once, then again, and a third time, with a wet, cracking thunk. Doyle gasped once, then went still. The monster tossed his body to the ground like garbage, and then with no hesitation, it raised one massive foot and stomped down on Doyle's head. The skull collapsed like an eggshell. A sharp, wet crunch echoed through the woods, final, brutal. For a moment, the creature paused, its chest rising, blood steaming from its wounds. Then it remembered. Terry. Its meal was fleeing. It dropped to all fours with a bestial grunt, favoring its wounded leg, and began to chase, limping at first, then faster, running low like a hunting animal, its claws tearing at the forest floor, wounded, enraged, and still hungry. Terry ran like she never had in her life, lungs on fire, heart pounding in her ears, legs burning with every step. Behind her, the sound of death. A heavy lopsided gallop, crashing through the scorched underbrush. She risked a glance back. The creature was 200 yards away, on all fours, charging like a freight train with fangs. Blood dripped from its thigh, but it didn't care. It was gaining. Ahead, the road, pale gray, splintered, salvation. Faster, she told herself, chest heaving. Faster, Terry, just a little more. She glanced back again, 20 feet. Its eyes locked with hers. She dropped her backpack mid-run, desperate to shed even an ounce of weight. Her hand fumbled for the last road flare. Click, snap, frish. She lit it, turned, and hurled it straight into the creature's path. The flare landed with a sizzle, bathing the forest in red firelight. The Bigfoot skidded, claws digging into ash. It reared back, not in fear, but in rage, its roar shaking the air. That second was all she needed. Terry burst onto the road, sprinting across cracked pavement to the opposite tree line, as far from the forest as possible. She didn't stop running until the woods were behind her. Then her phone buzzed. Signal. She slowed to a brisk walk, heart still hammering. Hands trembling, she tapped 911. The phone rang. 911, what's your emergency? Terry stopped walking. She could barely speak. Her throat burned. Her body shook. I need to report an animal attack. Up in the hills. My entire crew is dead. A pause. Then the operator's voice again. What kind of animal, ma'am? Terry swallowed hard. It was a Bigfoot, 9 feet tall. Her voice cracked. It killed them. My name is Terry. A roar. Close. Too close. Terry turned. And the beast was there. It launched out of the tree line like a nightmare, hitting her like a truck. They crashed into the ditch off the roadside in a blur of limbs and screams. The phone tumbled to the pavement. still connected. The operator screamed Terry's name, but all that came through the speaker was a loud scream from a terrified woman, then the wet, tearing sounds and bone-snapping crunches, and then, finally, silence. 7 minutes later, the first squad car arrived. All they found was a blood-slick flash drive, Terry's shattered phone, and a long crimson drag trail leading back into the forest, like something had gone home. Epilogue. 1 week later, the recovery team found what was left of Terry Lyons 7 days after her final call. Scattered across a shaded ravine half a mile from the road, her bones were splintered and hollow, stripped clean of muscle, tendon, and skin. The larger fragments, femur, pelvis, sections of the rib cage, had been cracked open, the marrow sucked dry. Her skull was found wedged between 2 rocks, crushed at the temple, jaw dislocated, a frozen scream still etched across the shattered remains. The forensic report was blunt, all soft tissue consumed. Bones appear chewed and shattered with tremendous force, consistent with large predator activity, unknown species. Local authorities quietly sealed off the access road leading into the fire-damaged quadrant. The official statement cited ongoing environmental hazards and instability due to erosion. No further search efforts were launched. No media statement was made. The flash drive, however, was sent to the State Environmental Commission. But before it could be reviewed, it disappeared from the evidence locker. No one could explain how or who accessed it. But somewhere, someone has the footage, the last footage, the last transmission. Thanks for watching and listening to The Last Transmission. If you made it this far, you're brave enough for what comes next. New fiction, new terror, new chills, every week. Like, share, and subscribe to Obsidian Quill Publishing, Nightmares, because the dark is just getting started.